So a whole lot of us are suddenly working from home and dealing with less than ideal office setups. And I was talking to my husband, who is in that boat. He's a Cook Medical employee and he has been working from home all of this week. I noticed that he had on his whiteboard this infographic that he was provided by Cook Medical. Cook is really good about providing these sorts of infographics that give detailed information on how to take care of yourself. I think that must be something to do with that global health and wellness department that they've got. So you've probably seen ergonomic things like this where they show that you want to have your back upright, your arms not super extended, everything at 90-degree angles. And because this information is pretty widely available, it's one of those things that folks take for granted a lot of times when they find themselves in a situation like working from home. It's pretty easy to just sort of assume that when you start having a pain and you don't know where it came from, that might be related to something like aging or weight or whatever like that. And a lot of times it's something really innocent, just like where your feet are sitting in space when you are sitting still for too long, okay? So I decided to film this in here at my office because at my home office I actually have a keyboard tray and a monitor that's mounted to the wall, and that didn't seem super realistic to me for most folks who are suddenly working from a home office. So I thought that this actually might be a better setup. You can see my desk here is basically a big table, and it's kind of on the high side. I set it that way on purpose so I could cross my legs underneath, but it does make ergonomics kind of tricky, okay? And there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can see that as I'm sitting here like this, leaning forward slightly, I do have most of those 90-degree angles in effect. Okay, down here at my ankles, here at my knees, and then here at my hips. But I'm nowhere near my workstation and my arms are below the surface, okay? So one of the things that you can do, of course, is raise up your chair to get it to where your arms can more nicely rest on your work surface. And then you can elevate your feet with some kind of little step like I have here, okay? But these sorts of things can sometimes backfire, okay? So one of the things that I didn't notice one day when I actually tried to work at my desk with it set up like this, and with this little step under here, my hips are really kind of a little too flexed, especially if I'm, leaning forward, working hard like I always do. Plus, there's a lot of space between my back and this backrest here if I'm sitting in ideal posture. So one of the things that you can do is get a pillow to put behind your back so that you can still maintain that good posture, even if your chair and your workstation don't fit your body quite perfectly. Okay, so you want to tuck that kind of above your sacrum so that you get a little bit more support in your lower back and upper back. And now I can sit here at my desk, relatively supported in all directions. My hips are probably still a little bit more flexed than I would want them to be, but that's one of those things where there's kind of a 20-degree range. Some people feel better with their hips kind of down at 80 degrees. Some people like them better more up at 110 degrees. So that's what folks mean when they say sort of overly simple statements like, ergonomics don't really matter, or they don't contribute to pain, or, the human body is too resilient to be damaged by things like as simple as like your chair position or where you're sitting. The fact is, the reason that sedentary lifestyles end up being so bad for us a lot of times is because of things that are really simple like this. It's just like something that ends up causing you a little bit of pain in your back. You can end up relying on pain prescription to manage that, or you can stop exercising as much as you would ordinarily because of that pain. So keep that in mind. If you start to notice your lower back, your upper back, your neck aching a little bit now that you've started working from home, those are some things that you want to take a look at. If you're getting headaches, a lot of times that has to do with your monitor height and what angle your head is at, okay? So a lot of us end up with our heads way out in front of us like this. Us physical therapists call that head forward, and I end up giving a lot of folks exercises to strengthen up these stabilizing muscles in the front of their throat, because the muscles on the back of your neck just end up kind of hanging on for dear life. That big trapezius back here, this big triangle muscle, that's the one that ends up doing the work when you got your head out too far forward, okay? So a lot of times in physical therapy, you're trying to bring that head back so that your ear is aligned up over your shoulder a little bit better. And the way that I actually sit at this desk most of the time is kind of a compromise between what I just showed you and what would really be ideal, okay? So I'm not sure if the angle really shows it very well here, but I am slightly on a downward angle looking at even my taller monitor here, and then I've got a lower screen to look at to the left of it, which is my laptop that's up on a riser, okay? So having a big difference in the height of your monitors can make a difference if you're getting those head and neck aches. That's something to definitely keep in mind. Ideally, your elbow is going to be at 90 degrees and along the side of your body when you're reaching forward for that keyboard, okay? You want to basically be in here close. If you can't quite do that, close counts, okay, but watch for pressure points. One of the things that I notice sometimes sitting at this desk is that I start to feel a little bit of pressure developing on the heel of my hand here, because it's digging into this hard surface and my keyboard's up on an angle. Keyboards are another thing to keep in mind, okay? This is just a wireless keyboard and it's got these little feet on it. Sometimes I will fold those down and use my keyboard flat depending on how I'm sitting, okay? There probably is not a one right, absolute perfect way to set up your desk unless you have deliberately designed your entire workstation for great ergonomics. So, try to do the best with what you have. Consider alternatives, okay? You can always look into getting a standing desk, and those don't necessarily have to be very expensive. This is a little podium style rolling standing desk that I got from my office, and I mostly use it to hold some of my physical therapist stuff and hold my Graston instruments when I'm doing treatments. But it would be very suitable for use as a standing desk, and it's pretty low tech. You just adjust the height with these knobs here and up here. You can adjust the angle with those knobs. So low tech, costs, I think this was $90 or $100 on Amazon. So not super expensive if buying something new is an option. A less expensive option if you're looking to buy something new and unable to make an existing desk or table that you have at home work is a lap desk, okay? So I don't actually have my lap desk from home here with me, but essentially a lap desk is like a hard flat surface that has a big bean bag attached to the bottom so that it can sit comfortably on your lap and hold usually your computer, but you can use it to write in a notepad or do art or whatever you want to, okay? So that's the kind of desk I actually used a lot of times when I was in college and I was studying. I still use it at home if I feel like sitting on the couch with my computer instead of sitting at my desk, and that's totally a valid option. Right now, I'm actually doing something that's causing a little bit of an ache in my lower back that I forgot to mention earlier. I have a tendency to tuck my legs back under my chair like this, okay? And I'm not so good at math and physics and stuff like that, so I'm not very good at explaining those sorts of things, exactly why putting my feet back here as opposed to flat on the ground right here would end up changing the angle of my back to make it kind of sore. But suffice it to say, that is what happens if I end up sitting with my feet tucked under my chair, if I kick them out like this all the time, if I always have one leg crossed over the other. So those are some other things to look at if you are having some pain at your home office. If all else fails, you can always go and talk to your friendly neighborhood physical therapist. I'm still over here at Patient PT taking appointments because of the COVID-19 pandemic that is currently spreading like wildfire across the United States and is already causing some major havoc and heartbreaking consequences over in Italy. There's a lot of social isolation going on here in Bloomington, and I mostly have just stayed open because I'm a sole provider. I'm the only person here. There's no busy waiting room. So it's relatively low risk for folks to come in here to my office, but just to be a little bit extra cautious, I've been keeping an eye on what other healthcare institutions are doing, and I've decided I'm going to start doing temperature screens. So anybody who comes to visit me here at my office, I will ask you to pause for a moment before you step in and give you a little zap with this infrared thermometer. This one's actually an infant thermometer, but I've got a clinical grade 1 on its way here in about a week. But this one is accurate enough to tell if you have an active fever. And the reason that folks are screening for temperature is because even though you can spread coronavirus, whether you have any symptoms or not, including fever, you are the most actively shedding virus and therefore the most contagious when you have a fever. So as an added precaution in a relatively low risk environment, temperature screening is a pretty good tool, but when you're going into hospitals, when you're actually a care provider or you work with somebody who's immunocompromised, you need to be a little bit more careful than that. So I'm also offering telehealth visits, which I actually always have. I just don't have folks take me up on it too often, but some of you may be a little bit more interested in that these days. And I'm going to start offering house calls here pretty soon. So if you'd like, I can come to your house, take a look at your ergonomic setup or not so ergonomic setup, wherever it is that you're trying to work from right now, and see if we can get you set up with something that will cause you a little bit less pain, and maybe an exercise program that'll strengthen up whatever it is that's not quite doing its job and causing that pain in the first place. So that's my spiel on ergonomics. One thing I did mean to mention is sometimes you just need a little bit more lumbar support with some of these. You can put a pillow behind your back to help you stay upright, especially if you're having some of those upper back issues like pain between your shoulder blades that are associated with having your arms way out in front of you. That'll allow you to stay a little closer to your keyboard. But if that seems like overkill, another thing that you can do is just take a regular towel. This one is a dish towel. For a lot of folks, that's pretty much big enough for these purposes. You may want a small bath towel instead, depending on what amount of curvature you have or don't have in your lumbar spine. But that's something else that you can do that's basically free. You don't need to get out to the store to get a towel roll. You can just make one. You can tape it up with masking tape. If it's too big, you can cut the towel, tape it back up again, and have a lumbar roll that is the perfect size for you. If it's too small, you can get a bigger towel, do the same thing, okay? But basically, if you're going to be using a lumbar roll, you want to put it here in that curved part of your spine, okay? And again, that's going to be something that's a little different for everybody. I like to put mine kind of halfway between this sort of more rib part of my back and this bony big triangle bone called the sacrum, and that's where it feels the most comfortable for me, okay? Those are some things to try if you're having some issues with that desk setup. I hope that this was helpful. Stay healthy out there, everyone.